Aloha. Again, I'm your host, Ken Lawson. Welcome to Life in the Law. And this week, this is our final show for the year, and I have a very special guest with me as we go into 2015 and put an end to 2014 from Amnesty International, and she's been on here before. Welcome again, Beatrice Cantelmo.
Thank you so much for having me tonight.
It's always a pleasure having you. Now, you know, you can have such a soft, sweet voice, right? I need you to keep it up because everybody needs to hear what you have to say. So how you been?
I'm good. I'm busy. I'm hopeful. Very engaged in the community.
A lot's been going on this year, not just locally here in Hawaii, but nationwide, hasn't especially when it comes to human rights.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we can start talking about what's happening locally or nationally. What would you like to touch?
Let's talk locally. Yeah. Over the last year, we've seen a lot of, first of all, we started seeing a lot of complaints from, I think it was businesses, but they were blaming it on the tourists, right? Tourists are tired of coming here and seeing homeless and stuff like that. I think it was really just downtown businesses, this is just speculation, trying to get council and others and the mayor to pass laws to criminalize homelessness. And so we saw some laws passed. The last time you were here, back in September, what's going on now?
Okay, so unfortunately from September to now, we have several ordinances that were passed and now they are in effect. So the first ordinance, which was Bill 42, which was the sit-lie bill for Waikiki area.
Sit-lie means what?
Meaning sitting down or lying on common areas like the sidewalks. So that bill was passed for Waikiki, in September, and it was put into effect in October. And then now in November, we had a series of other ordinances that extended to 14 more districts. So what that means is that we have about roughly 1,300 homeless individuals that cannot be in specific areas. And for the Chinatown downtown business, which was Bill 62, that was passed on December 12th.
Right.
And just on December 22nd, it's now being enforced. So what that means now for a homeless individual is that if he or she is sitting or lying in any of these districts, they can either be cited up to $1,000 fine, go to a court hearing, they will have a misdemeanor record against them. They can also go to jail for up to 30 days. So that's really, there's several problems with this line of criminalization. One, it's unconstitutional on several levels, from human right aspect, but also our constitutional human rights in the United States.
Is anybody legally challenging that now?
Not in Hawaii yet. However, in other states, there were several states that had to undergo litigation and complaints systems to be able to have cities and states relooking at ordinances and criminalization of homelessness bills.
I have to. Again, I hate to interrupt you,
Sure.
but I have to ask this question.
Sure.
Are you saying that with these measures being passed, that either legal aid, ACLU, no one on this island, whether it's private lawyers doing it pro bono, are challenging these ordinances, or?
I think we're going to, part of what's really exciting about my work with Amnesty International is to be able to do that groundwork and that team collaborative effort. So once these ordinances were being passed, I have connected with the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty. They are really the lead expert in these kinds of issues because
Okay.
they really monitor and track what's happening.
Where are they based at?
They're based in Washington, D.C.,
Okay.
and I have so much gratitude to their organization, especially Attorney Eric Tars, who have been wonderful in terms of giving us the technical assistance and the advocacy training that we need to be able to do the groundwork now to be able to challenge the city. So this is really a job of a village. It's a power that is created by many organizations and many individuals who are collectively coming together and documenting the injustices that are happening now since these ordinances are law and are being applied, so that we can do the groundwork for ACLU and Legal Law Center and other centers who will be involved in the next step of this process.
So it makes their job easier when you do the ground.
Yes, and we're doing it together. It's a collaborative effort, and so this is why it's so crucial that we really receive the proper training and we work in conjunction, collaboratively with each other, so that we really have the strength that it's necessary to be able to move forward. That's what other states had to do.
Have you found it difficult to get groups to come together, or?
Initially it was a little bit difficult. I don't know if it's because people are really working so hard to just keep afloat and taking care of their own vision and mission for their organization. But I think that slowly, more and more organizations, are coming together. They are recognizing and really appreciating
the common interest.
The common interest and the strength that we have as a group. The Iroquois nation used to have this saying that if you have a target and you hit it with an arrow, but one arrow, well, maybe you're gonna get it, but you have 8 arrows going at the same time, in momento, you really get that target, much better. So this is really what's really exciting about the upcoming year. We have a lot of work ahead of us. It's very sad that until we are in a position where we can renegotiate the public policies and the legislation that's necessary to overturn these ordinances that were passed, that the impact on those who are really being hurt with is going to be very hard. So like right now, the city does say that they have some provisions to address some of the issues with homelessness right now. They say that they have some budget allocated, like about $46 million to address homelessness issue. But the housing first model that they are proposing is not the model that it's followed nationwide. So, for example, one of the discrepancies that we see is affordable housing. Right now, Honolulu does not have anything in place, or not even in the pipeline, to get it ready to really address the affordability of housing, not just for people who are homeless, but I think anyone that lives in this place. So that's one issue. We have city raids that happens very randomly in different neighborhoods, and that is devastating because you have people who are living on the streets and they have very few belongings, and it's absolutely disheartening and inhumane to see city officials coming with 4 individuals and lifting up an entire tent and just putting in the rubbish truck, and you see their entire belongings just gone. So even the procedure that the city is supposed to follow in these kinds of instances are not even being respected. There are so many infractions on human and civil rights violations, with these procedures that we're watching, we are documenting.
When you say documenting, you filming too? Or?
Filming. We're now creating also a official protocol that homeless advocates in the community are using, and also using with houseless individuals to be able to get the information that's necessary, so that we can start creating the track system, so that the legal aspect of this issue gets to be addressed in the upcoming year.
Well, let me ask you this. A lot of our viewers don't, this is your second time on the show, they don't know you. You're not from Hawaii, right?
No.
Okay, how'd you get here?
Okay, so I am from
You didn't
Brazil.
fly down out of a saucer or anything like that. You're not from another planet. How'd you get here?
No, I got here in June. Initially to help a friend of mine who moved here a couple of months earlier from Wisconsin and her husband. I was actually en route to Berkeley to start grad school this fall. And from some divine intervention, I'm here. And I think there was a calling somewhat for me to be a part of Hawaii and contribute and learn. But that's how I got here. It was not even a plan to, live in Hawaii.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but I'm from Brazil originally. I was born and raised in Brazil. I think that was really the place where I learned to look at social issues from a social justice and human rights frame.
What got you interested when you were?
I think it's really the disparity that you see socially, economically, and all of the issues with violence and the segregation and the racism that is very subtle in Brazil because it's hidden under classicism. And as a child, I remembered asking myself, well, how come I have a place to live and I can go to school, and right across the street we have homeless children and families, they don't have the same access, and nobody could really give me a right answer. Or an answer that really sounded, acceptable. And so I think that really was the seed that got planted. And when you start looking at human suffering and you start learning about how governments work, and you start thinking about urban planning and sustainable government, and you start seeing that these are issues that could be really reversed and addressed in a more efficient manner. And that really is where it kind of got me started, and I never stopped.
Well, good for you. Good for you. I mean, it comes from the heart, and I think to be in the type of work that you're in, and that Amnesty International, you have to care about people.
Yes, and my professional career also, I feel that what I watched as a child and adolescent, then I had that first impact, as a service provider. So the first 6 years of my career were devoted to early childhood education and at-risk families. So when you think about poverty and services, and you think about domestic violence, sex violence, and you think about the rise of child maltreatment and housing issues, it's all interconnected. And you can work really hard to address these issues individually with the family, but if the system is broken, there's no continuum of care, we're still dealing with the same core issues. And so it was very frustrating and very humbling, I think, as a service provider, wanting to make a difference, to see how limited, without, in our roles, to be able to really do the work that was necessary and be successful at it. And so I think at the most what I could do was to be a witness and to make sure that those who were going through their hardships were being heard, and that not discount their experiences. But it also taught me the level of privilege that we have, and how these privileges happen, and how much division we have. I feel very fortunate that I was born and raised in a family where education was a privilege afforded,
Right.
And so that really shaped a lot of my future. And when I look at civil rights and human justice and issues and social justice issues, we look at the basics, and who gets these basic needs met, and why, and who's holding it, and who's preventing, those from, moving forward. Next year, we're going to be working also with a couple of local campaigns in one very special community that we have at heart is the Micronesian community. So we have to think about
Tell me why you say that.
I say that because in my direct contact with houseless individuals, I see a lot of Micronesian families who are houseless and their children. And I honestly did not know much about the Marshall Islands and really the Cofa Nations and what had happened to them 70 years ago, that the United States really used their land as a place to try out their nuclear bombing training. So in the course of 12 years, their islands were bombarded about 13 times the strength of what the Hiroshima bomb, impacted Japan. And so as a result of that, the islands are inhabitable. The people who were living there had a lot of health issues. Many of them died because of radioactive exposure. And even now, the ones who are here in Honolulu, the children are much more susceptible to illnesses. Their immune system is much weaker. We have a high incidence.
The physical effects from.
Yes, still from 60 years of, radioactive exposure. So, genetically, there is a track there, that they're still carrying it. Cancer is also a high incidence amongst the Micronesian. But
let me do this.
Yes.
We have to take a break real quick, but I want to come back and talk to you a little bit more about the Micronesian population here. And some of the things that's been in the news lately that were shocking to yourself and to myself and to a lot of other people. But we'll be right back after this break.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
All right, welcome back. You're on Life in the Law with Ken Lawson, your host, and our guest here, Beatrice. We were talking before we went to break about the Micronesian community here in Honolulu, and you were really giving us a pretty good history, because a lot of people don't know. When I first came to the island, I really was ignorant of the Micronesian community, their history, and I'll be totally frank. I mean, to me, everybody just kind of blended in together when I first, got here. So I didn't really understand the discrimination and the racism that has faced this group of people here on the island and how pervasive it is. But I don't mean to get ahead of our topic, but we were talking a little bit during the break about, and before we left the break, about the effects of our government testing the nuclear bombs and stuff like that 60, 70 years ago, and the physical effects that it's still having.
Yes, but not only that, so we really have a huge debt with an entire community that got everything stripped away from them, from their land, their culture, their health. So we had the Cofa Nations, treaty created, and they're here. And yet, there is a disconnect with the level of services that they need to be able to be self-sufficient and thriving. So very basic things that we need to touch base on it. Language accessibility, training, education, not only for the children, but for the adults who are here. Affordable housing is another one. Health is a huge issue also that is happening. I've learned that a lot of the children who are houseless, they were not even on the system for Obamacare this summer because they don't have an address, and somehow in the system the parents didn't get the information that they needed because they cannot receive mail. So something as basic as a child not having access to health insurance, which is available to them, can be really devastating, not only in terms of continuum of care, but even in something as basic of being able to enroll in school, because they need to have their immunization and they need to have their physicals up to date. And so we're addressing things from that level. We are addressing issues with discrimination and differential treatment in so many areas in the medical, legal, educational systems. You know, I cannot begin to describe my sentiment of shame and outrage when I hear the children that I work with who are from Micronesian families saying that they are called cockroaches in school.
Yeah.
You know, that is unacceptable anywhere in this world, and yet it's happening here in Honolulu. Obviously, not everybody is that way, and we cannot generalize it. I think that there's a lot of effort being made to be able to make it a more inclusive kind of situation, but we got long ways to go.
Well, you know, I think one of the problems is because we live in what's classified as paradise, because everyone talks about having a aloha spirit, people don't want to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yes.
That there are problems, right?
Yes.
Because if you mention their problems, then somehow you're taken away from the fact that we're trying to, you know, you're messing up my aloha spirit, so to speak, as opposed to just addressing certain issues. And one of the issues is discrimination and the way that certain groups are treated here in what's called paradise. And until it's addressed, you can dress it up as much as you want to. You're going to have ordinances getting passed where we criminalize homelessness. You're going to have prosecutors standing up in open court, as one did last week, and telling the judge that he needs to send a message to the Micronesian community and sentence a man that's Micronesian to 20 years in prison, to send a message that they can't drink, and, you know, almost as if, let me back up. You know, in that case last week, it was in the newspaper, and what had happened was two Micronesian men got into an argument after drinking. They were friends. One stabbed the other. The guy, his last name was David, went to trial for getting into an argument with his friend and killing him. He was convicted of manslaughter, and at sentencing, the prosecutor stood up in open court in front of the judge and said, you know, Judge, you have seen this too. I'm sure defense counsel has seen it also. We get so many Micronesian men coming in here that have been drinking. We need you to send a message to the Micronesian men particularly, that they can't go out drinking and acting like this and then causing trouble. Something's got to stop. We want you to send them to give him 20 years in prison and make an example of him, right? Now, and anywhere else in the United States, that prosecutor had been locked up.
Yes, in contempt of court, maybe disbarred.
Man, and plus, if I'm the defense lawyer, I'd have probably came out, you know, over the table after him, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. Well, you know, but these are the things that we need to, I see it as an opportunity for invitation to our leaders to be able to rethink our role in this community, the message that we send, because it's the tone that we are giving not only to our colleagues, but also to our community in general. So if a prosecutor can be discriminatory and can make remarks of such nature and not have any accountability and consequences, how will you, as a neighbor of a Micronesian or a Samoan or a Pacific Islander, relate, you know, to issues that you may, you know, have? So we really need to revisit in our bias and our conduct.
Well, it's not just that. It's not just, look, the good news about him saying it is that now we know how he felt. Had he not said it, he could have still been discriminating. But the two things struck me about that, Beatrice, is one is that he felt comfortable enough to say it in open court, as if, you know what, everybody knows it, and, you know, it's almost as if nothing's going to happen, you know, if it's okay, right? And then secondly, if that's how you really feel as a prosecutor, then what happens when I have a Micronesian client and I come in and I say, look, man, you know, my client wants to get a plea bargain. He knows he was wrong. are you giving him a harsher plea? Are you recommending a harsher sentence without saying that than you are if I come in with a white client or an Asian client, right? Are you, because he's Micronesian, are you saying, okay, well, I'm going to give you this plea bargain where you got to go to prison for 5 years, and then when another person comes in, same crime, but a different ethnic group or a different race, they get probation? That's the real issue, because we see Native Hawaiians, other minorities, Micronesians, are getting harsher sentences, longer prison sentences here in Hawaii than anybody else, right?
And these are issues that we have. That's one of the many elephants in the room.
Yeah.
That we're looking at it, but we're really trying to cover it with a big rug, and it's not big enough to cover it, and neither we should cover it. We really need to address it, and there is a interconnectedness also with what's happening in the mainland. When you look at also who gets to be sent to jail and being unfairly judged and sentenced, and how do disparities in race relations and socioeconomics, play a role in these rulings and findings. And so we have a lot of work to do. I hope that this is something that we can take locally as a campaign and really force our local legal team, to revisit, their own practices and adopt more efficient and equal practices, to those that they're serving. It's a very necessary thing. Well, we do have an active Amnesty International Honolulu chapter. We have ACLU Hawaii, and I think that the more we see these issues, the more we are aware of the ramifications. What does that mean when a prosecutor in court, feels so comfortable and talks about how should someone be sentenced and punished based on where they come from. We got a lot of homework to do.
And how are they being policed in that particular area? I mean, a lot of people base their decisions on stereotypes about particular ethnic groups and particular races. But the bottom line, just like the more African American men serving prison sentences for drug-related crimes. And people think, well, that's because they're out on it. But when you look at it on a percentage basis, a lot of drug sales in the white community go on in the office building, right? They go on in the suburbs. These places aren't being policed. You don't have to hang out on the corner to go buy drugs and on the mainland and suburban white communities, because you can go to your friend's house. You can go to the office. So on a percentage basis, whites are engaged in drug trafficking a lot higher than any other group. Right? But that doesn't come out, right? Yeah. So the stereotype is, well, you guys are just drug dealers. That race does this, Micronesians do that, Native Hawaiians do this, you know what I mean? And that systemic type of institutional racism has to be addressed by educating everybody on the fact that we're all brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. And of our privileges, and also the responsibility that comes with these privileges. Just because you don't feel that you can be involved, or that this does not relate to you, it does not mean that you have the right to oppress or to not be engaged.
What about the person that says, well, you know what, I don't have anything to do with this family being homeless. I go to work every day, and they have the same opportunity. If they're homeless, they choose to be homeless, right? And so I'm not oppressing them. They're free. They can go out and get a job any day.
Well, that is really what I hear every day from the people who say, what are you doing? These people get a lot of help. Well, the first thing I say is, like, it's not these people, it's not them and us, it's we. That is a big distinction there. We are not so special, as a class, if you're middle class or rich or poor. We're one amongst 7 billion individuals living in this world. And so we need to set the tone a little differently here. But when we're talking about privileges and accessibility, it starts with this presumption that everybody has the same opportunities. We may be born equal, but we're not equal in terms of where you end up in school, housing, with your health, and opportunities for you to thrive. I think that is the first step for someone who feels, that somebody has the same rights and opportunities that, they have been granted. It's like, well, let's revisit my biases here. Is this really true? Right now, for someone who's homeless, I mean, there is an 8 to 10 year waiting list for affordable housing for someone to get into, to housing.
That's
10 years.
That's ridiculous. Let's do this. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about again, but we're going to come back on the other side of this with some hope, right?
Yes.
Because even though some of these issues are heartbreaking, there are issues that have to be faced, and it's kind of, even in this holiday season, people don't want to talk about things that make them depressed. But the bottom line is, these are, at least in my opinion, these are our brothers and sisters, and I don't know how I can comfortably celebrate and feel great when I know there's other things that I could be doing, but I'm not doing to help somebody else that's not as fortunate as I am. So anyway, with that speech being said, let's go to break, and we'll be right back after it.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevelin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday. Aloha.
All right, we're back. Life and Along. I'm your host, Kenneth Lawson. This is our last show for the year. And the ladies in here that work behind the cameras and yell in my ear, they have been so great. This show, my show anyway, could not be, it could always be better, but without their help, I'd be lost. So thank you, ladies. Anyway, before we get into hope, we see, I wanted to talk to you about torture and all the stuff that came out with the CIA, but when I contacted you, that was going on but a few weeks, but now the protests that we've seen nationwide, throughout almost every state, the issues with police shooting unarmed black men and boys, and then over the past weekend we saw 2 New York City officers get killed. We saw the FOP, not FOP, but the police union rep from New York City basically at one point declared war on the community, and here was my take on that, because I see some of that now. It's almost like they try to put the protesters in a box, that somehow if you support protesting, you're anti-police. Somehow if you support protesters, that means you're pro-black, and if you're pro-black, you're anti-police. And what's getting lost in the rhetoric is that you can support justice for people and still support the police. It's not either or. In fact, it's inconsistent to say that you don't support justice and support good police.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's the box that, and I kind of see that a little bit, where if you speak out here, that means you're anti whatever, you know what I mean? It's almost like, don't say nothing, what, you're attacking us, right? And it's like, well, no, it's not an attack on anybody. It's, I can declare justice and stand up for justice for all people and still say that I support the principles this state is built on.
Absolutely. Well, but, we also have to remember, like, when we go back to Honolulu, one, how small our community is. And sometimes, you may have a lot of people who want to be vocal, but they also have to worry about their jobs. their professional development, where the fund streaming of their organization is going to go to. So, you know, these are very problematic issues when, you know, your basic right of free speech and really being able to, you know, do your civic duties, you have to weigh that, you know, very carefully and very strategically. And this is like really one of the worst effects of oppression. Just a couple weeks ago, I was talking with several advocate organizers about our own efforts to protest against Bill 62 and the other ordinances that were passed, you know, that criminalizes homelessness, because we have 1,300 people that are impacted as of now with this. And we had to worry about, if we do the protest, we have to be strategic about who's going to get to be sent to jail, ticket, can they afford it? Is it going to hurt them more than help them? And, you know, a light bulb started going for me, because I'm going, you know, people are hurting and they are, you know, suppressing all of this, and, you know, we're not able to even go out there and feel free and comfortable enough to speak up about it.
Well,
so I hope to change that. That's part of the hope for next year.
I think one, it has to be changed. I think that's the type of fear tactics, you know, fear of losing my job. Those fears get put in to play by the people that are in power, that don't want anybody to stand up and say, you know, there needs to be change. And it's only until, as you said earlier, people get pushed so far. You know, we saw the riots in Ferguson. I was involved in riots in 2001 in Cincinnati, Ohio, after police shootings. And it's not until it gets worse before it gets better. And that's not the way I would like to see this state go. You know what I mean? Why, if we learn anything, look at the other cities. You know, we got a police chief who, over the last year, and you don't have to say nothing, I'll say it, I mean, I'm like, what kind of chief are you? You know what I mean? To go down in federal court, get on the stand in a case where you claim somebody stole your mailbox, and then just end up testifying to generate a mistrial when you know better, right? To sit there and see that officer on videotape beating the heck out of his girlfriend and say, you know what, and
that was personal.
Right, and when the female legislatures say, well, we would like to meet with you, he cancels the first meeting.
Yes.
And basically saying, you know, and what he was basically, you know, you guys won't tell me how to run my police department, you know. The arrogance, the prosecutor, right, that stood up in court and basically made a racist statement about Micronesians. But not only that, we've seen over the last year where they have missed cases where people, victims of sex crimes, right? Because of the statute of limitations, a lot of people were let go,
out of it,
right? I don't know. But the fear keeps people from saying anything. The fear keeps a chief like that in his position.
And I think that, well, the good of the bad news is that we know. So knowledge is power, because then we can take responsibility collectively to, you know, get organized and to say, wait a minute, you know, this is not okay. This does not have to be the status quo. Oh, it's just, you know, how it is. What can we do about it?
I mean, a lot of times that's what it seems like, you know.
That's where most people feel, you know, that it's like, well, what's the recourse? What do we do? So, you know, I really think that the power here is in the strength of many, of people coming together collectively and organizing and creating coalitions and task forces and aligning with those who are already doing the groundwork and say, okay, we need something different. And we need an accountability system, and we need ways to change the system. It's like, it's not about we are against you know, the police or a prosecutor in particular.
I'm not against
it's about improving, you know, to really make it work for everybody. And that these kinds of disparities, these kinds of situations do not continue to occur. And so, I was very surprised when I first moved to Honolulu, and I don't know how the sentiment is, in the other islands, so I will only speak for Oahu, but how politically disengaged a lot of people seem to be. And my hope is that this upcoming year and that for years to come, that people take more interest in understanding what's happening and looking at both sides of the angle of a particular issue, and also feel invested enough to say something, to talk to their legislators, to talk to their representatives, to find an area where they would like to learn more about it or that they are passionate about it and be connected with. We really need that. We do have a perfect state to do this, a city that, this can happen. It is needed. If we don't do it now, the issues that we have now are not going to get better.
Right. They're actually going to get worse. And, the sad thing is, in some states and some cities, like in Ferguson and even in Cincinnati, the truth of the matter is that it had to get worse in order for it to get better. Mm-hmm. But no one wants to see it deteriorate to that point, because at that point, that's when you push people to the brink of where they feel like we don't have anything else to lose. It's time to rise up. And that's what we saw in Ferguson. You see it in other cities. When people get pushed to the point where they feel like, there's no justice for us. Yes. Right? There's absolutely no justice for us. When I'm kind of venting now, but when I see all the money that's being used on rail, right, and then each time we turn it around, it's going up billions of dollars. Yes. Right, for a rail that goes from one side of the island to the mall, right? I mean, come on.
And again, we do need to do something about our public transportation system in the island.
Oh yeah, the traffic sucks, right?
However, there are other things. But the interesting thing that I'm learning, in my role too, is a lot of people feel, well, we don't have the money to be able to address and do the things that needs to be done with poverty. So if you think about affordable housing, you think about education, employment, training, childcare, health. The fact is, we do have the money. The problem is, it's how it's being allocated and how it's being spent.
And
accountability, because when you have problems, with, for example, someone who gets a grant, and they're supposed to deliver a program, and they don't, and they still get funded for the next, 4 or 5 years to do the same thing. Somebody's dropping the ball. And so we need to really also work with the whole system in a continuum and really look at what we're having now, value what's working, value the people who are really working hard in organizations that have good intentions, and really raise the bar for those who are our community partners who need to bring, their work and efforts to a next level of excellence. We need that. Mm-hmm. So that's the hope for 2015 and beyond,
Well, that is the hope, and as we leave.
And the push.
Because I'm glad you said that, because I had neglected to really get into hope. But when you were saying that, and the hope is people like you, Amnesty International, and other organizations that's trying to bring some light to those that are in the darkness, bring some hope to those that are hopeless, right? To say that, things can change, right? And even though it seems like things will never change, it takes one person to be motivated enough to try to motivate another, and it just continues on.
And I'm just one person, but I'm very proud to say that since I started with Amnesty International, we tripled our membership. And so
your caring is contagious. See, when you care about people and issues, that's contagious.
Yeah,
right?
and true, because people do see, it's like a matrix. You really see a bigger picture. You do see that it's really all pieces that we can come together. I can't tackle everything. I don't have an expertise, in all areas, of human rights and civil rights. But I'm passionate. I have certain trainees, and so I can do that. But we bring more people into this equation that have different expertise, who are willing to put forth their, time and effort and passion to do it. We have community partners who are willing to do this together, and so that's really exciting for me. happening.
Well, Beatrice,
Children, to see children wanting to be involved.
see, this is what I
Love
mean. It's so
it,
contagious. You won't let me close out the show. Now, look. Thank you for coming again, and we hope to talk to you again next year. Again, my name is Kenneth Lawson, your host of Life in the Law, and we'll see you in 2015.